Are you already on, Riki-sana?
Welcome, dear viewers, today to our format Experience Medicine. Today I have Dr. Heinz Lüscher with me, and we are talking about activation in senior age. What causes fatigue and how do I manage to get back into dynamic and power? And today you will get a lot of information on that. Look forward to it. See you soon. Hello, dear Heinz. Nice to have you here.
Hello, Corina, once again.
Yes, very nice. You are actually the best example of being fit, performance.
Fit in old age, you mean?
Exactly, fit in old age.
I just don't feel old at all.
Yes, and that's exactly the point. And I'm very pleased because you're really speaking from experience and might also be familiar with the various processes, since we've already had many interviews together. You actually come from classical conventional medicine and came relatively late to this truly integrative medicine. And it would naturally be exciting for me now to know if you've also gone through this process in your own dynamics or in how the body behaves, where you say, okay, before I took very classical, maybe even medications, or as one typically would.
Yes. So my whole lifestyle has adapted to the insights. So in the past, like everyone else, I simply thought I was eating well, but didn't think much about it. And with all the insights, I've really changed my diet. I've consciously done more fitness training. I make sure that there's always enough sleep. So yes, I don't just preach water and drink wine. I really try to live the way I recommend to patients.
What is the biggest challenge? I could imagine, of course, we have the situation, the first one's already getting, oh God, we already have 6-year-olds getting blood pressure medication. But at some point, a limit is reached when you're around 60. And on average, how many medications accumulate in the weekly pill organizer?
That varies a lot. Our patients are, of course, used to primarily taking care of themselves biologically and avoiding medication as much as possible. That is the goal for most of my patients. If someone is new, who has never dealt with integrative medicine, and comes and says, I am no longer satisfied with my doctor and come to us, then I practically always have a list of 5, 7, sometimes 10 medications to bring along. That's already everyday life.
The classic that I always encounter is cholesterol reducers, blood pressure reducers. Then there's also often metformin. Women also get, I have the feeling, like Smarties. L-thyroxine, that's also a classic.
Yes, that's right. So practically aspirin, cardio, and a blood pressure medication and a cholesterol reducer. Practically everyone brings that along. From about 50 and then after 65, rheumatic pain is added and maybe an antidepressant. So the list is so long, or something to help with sleep. And no one thinks about it. I'm sometimes amazed at how naive the patients are. The doctor prescribes a whole bag full and they just, swallow it without questioning whether it's really necessary. But that is the self-responsibility of the patients, and I can only ever appeal to that.
This unconscious swallowing of medication, I know, Alexander once told at lunch, they once really looked through a 70-year-old's medication, there was even a birth control pill in it. Because it doesn't matter. Everything is just taken without rhyme or reason. But what are such classic side effects where you would say the medication should really be looked at again? I can also remember the report on cholesterol-lowering drugs.
Exactly. So cholesterol-lowering drugs are certainly very problematic. Of course, we learned that. I also hear that in further training. Everyone needs it. It's so important. That is also conveyed to me that way. Do I have my question marks there? The main side effect of statins is fatigue. because it massively lowers the Q10 levels in the cells, sometimes by over 50%. And Q10 is a precursor to energy molecules. And if this precursor is lowered, then you have less energy.
That's the case with chondriopathy. Then ultimately the result...
No, that has nothing to do with the mitochondria. If Q10 is lacking, ATP production is reduced purely from the metabolism. With healthy mitochondria, they don't have their main substance, their material with which they should produce energy.
So in a way, the fuel supply is turned off.
Yes, you could say that. Often there are also muscle pains. That's what they most likely feel. But fatigue, that is just not directly noticeable. People might have them for other reasons as well. So they are not attributed to the medication.
But I recently saw with a client, the total cholesterol was medically reduced to 90. runter reduziert, medikamentös. And I thought, what happens then? I mean, that's a very low value. Or, I don't know, he was proud of it. I thought, I'm not really sure.
So the goal of the industry or also cardiology is to reduce LDL cholesterol to zero.
Okay.
So I think we would be killing people if we did that. Because humans are not just made up of a heart. I always tell patients for the heart, it might be good, it lives a few years longer, but the brain takes damage if the cholesterol level is too low.
Das Gehirn nimmt Schaden, wenn der Cholesterinspiegel zu tief ist.
Cholesterol is a building block for the cell wall, practically throughout the entire body, but especially in the brain. My impression, I know it is vehemently disputed by medicine, but my impression is quite clear that cholesterol-lowering drugs at least contribute to the development of dementia. For this reason, regarding energy, the metabolic pathway in the energy sector.
I have also repeatedly experienced that blood pressure medication somehow changes the psyche. So when I gave lectures like that, and then there were women there where I said, you probably noticed that when your husband's got blood pressure medication, the fuse became somewhat shorter or the reactions changed. Something seems to stress the body. I think women are simply more aware of this, hence this symbolism or the example now.
I can't say through which pathway. I simply see that seniors are sometimes set extremely low in blood pressure. And that, in turn, increases fatigue. So, for me, at my age, if I have a blood pressure of 115, I feel dizzy. But that is the goal. The goal of medicine is to also set seniors at 120 over 80, not above. And that is wrong from my point of view, because the brain in old age, when there are some calcified vessels, needs higher pressure for brain circulation to function. In the past, when I was young, it was said that 100 plus 8 is a good rule of thumb. For me, that still holds true. Just not up to 100, but up to 60.
Yeah.
So personally, I also have slightly high blood pressure, but 150, 160 over 90 is absolutely perfect for me personally. I don't go low. I don't feel comfortable if I go too low.
There are also ways to regulate cholesterol and blood pressure, especially when one is in senior age, in a natural, integrative manner. Integrative Art und Weise zu regulieren. What tools do we have for that? Because that would also be the way to get out of this side effect trap of fatigue.
Yes, correct. I can't lower cholesterol well. There are no natural substances that simply lower cholesterol levels. There's only one, which is red yeast rice, but it is not available in Switzerland, for example. Why? I also don't understand. But it directly lowers the cholesterol level. It probably has a substance in it that works similarly to a statin, but still comes from nature. With blood pressure reducers, it's a bit easier. There is a whole range of vital substances.
So meine
Therapy in these cases is a combination of omega-3, OPC, K2, and fromaginine.
und vor allem Arginin.
Arginine is an amino acid that has a blood vessel widening effect. And you can feel that. I take it myself too. Cayenne pepper. It also has this blood vessel widening effect. But you simply have to admit natural treatment is not as effective as medication.
Nicht gleich effektiv wie ein Medikament.
I think what might also come back into consciousness is that as a patient, you take it for granted that you have to take the medication for life.
Dass man die Medikamente ein Leben lang nehmen muss.
That gets communicated. If you have high blood pressure, then you have to take your blood pressure medication for the rest of your life. And when we, on the other hand, work complementarily with L-arginine, OPC, omega-3, then all of a sudden, when everything is regulated, that is suddenly dropped.
Das auf einmal weggelassen.
Do you know the effect? Where? I think everything is going great now.
Jetzt läuft's doch super.
How do you come to that conclusion? Then suddenly you leave out the products,
Die Produkte dann weg.
or how do you deal with it?
Yes, that's true, but it probably has to do with the costs.
Mit den Kosten zu tun. Die Leute
People have to pay for these products themselves.
berappen. Ja,
The medications are covered by the health insurance companies, and especially arginine, those are not exactly cheap vital substances. So if you have to take it, you might spend 40, 50 euros or francs per month just for such a product.
pro Monat nur für so ein Produkt.
And that over a longer period. Of course, you're glad when you can stop taking it, but purely biologically, you're right, you should take it for a lifetime, assuming, of course, that blood pressure remains high. Blood pressure has a lot to do with stress. For seniors, when they reach retirement age, blood pressure often drops when the stress from work disappears.
Beruf wegfällt.
Ja.
Then regarding sleep,
Schlaf.
what are the challenges? Right now, you often hear about this waking up at night, lying awake.
Oder was sind so die Themen? Wie
How do you plan to regulate this so that daytime fitness is really guaranteed?
gewährleistet ist?
Yes, of course, everyone wishes for a healthy sleep.
Sich alle.
It doesn't work for many. So sleep disorders are part of everyday life.
Alltag.
For me, sleep disorders are very often linked to micronutrient deficiencies
Nährstoffmängeln mit
with an overly acidic metabolism.
Stoffwechsel. Die
Patients not only have sleep disorders alone, but it's associated with high blood pressure, fatigue, headaches, and many other symptoms.
mit Kopfschmerzen und vielen anderen Symptomen.
So sleep disorders are just one factor. So if you're really supplied with all the nutrients you need, then you sleep better. And what I also see is many seniors who do too little. Go climb a mountain, go hiking for 5 hours, then you'll sleep well too. That is then already too much of a challenge for many.
Eine zu große Herausforderung.
Yes, because the risk of overexerting yourself, probably because we also, so amusingly, I was hiking yesterday. Now I have it so vividly in mind because I really saw many different people there. And what really amazed me, even many older people, some with overweight, but with walking sticks, and they were really just slowly going up the mountain.
Und die sind wirklich halt ganz langsam den Berg hoch, ja? Nicht
Not this overwhelming, but small steps where they could breathe well, where I thought, I believe we also have a bit of a problem implementing our whole, this dosage of performance in such a way that we do not overstrain ourselves.
umzusetzen, dass wir uns nicht überfordern.
Because that is often the problem, that you then think you can still do as before. And then you come home and think, that was of course way too much.
Viel,
Ja.
Everything broken.
That doesn't work, of course. Doing nothing for half a year and then 5 hours, I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. For me, 5 hours is no problem, but I go every week. I do 3 hours every weekend. I'm in practice and then it's no problem. If someone hasn't moved yet, they must start very carefully. I agree with that. Even if you have certain complaints, that's no reason to do nothing.
Das ist kein Grund, nichts zu tun. Ja. Also das ist
That's an important factor against fatigue, that you do something.
was unternimmt. Das ist, es gibt ja, wenn ich
When I move, I need more oxygen, which refreshes the body too.
ja.
But sometimes you also have the feeling that it's like a kind of resignation and getting out of such a loop.
Schleife da rauszukommen.
Such a challenge. You somehow adapted to probably sofa, TV.
Ja.
Yes, sure, I can't contribute much to that.
Viel dazu beitragen. Also wenn
I can only encourage. There's no age where it's not worthwhile to become active again.
aktiver zu werden.
We can improve brain cells, we can build muscle, even at 90. I learned differently in the past.
Also
40 years ago, the opinion was that brain cells only die off over the course of a lifetime. Today we know that they can be replaced. Not all, but especially the synapses
Synapsen
can be increased so that the brain cells communicate better with each other again. And that gives the body energy and freshness again.
Energie und Frische.
And the muscles, so I go to a fitness center, I have little time, maybe once a week, but that's a huge difference. I feel significantly better when I do that. But overcoming myself, I have to do that too. It's not easy for me when I now go to the gym.
Noch ins Fitness, oder?
I know those feelings, but a little self-discipline, we've lost that.
Das haben wir verloren, oder?
Everything is so convenient. I can only encourage, do something, take action, look after yourselves.
Etwas. Schaut für euch selber aus
It is in our hands whether we age healthily or unhealthily.
oder krank.
How was the topic of nutrition for you? You had also mentioned earlier that you yourself had changed your diet when you dedicated yourself to the whole topic of integrative medicine.
Yes. Well, I was always a sugar junkie my whole life. Like many others too. Love chocolate, cake.
Das
Since I saw how harmful sugar is, one of the main factors for inflammation,
Entzündungen.
I have massively reduced it.
Also ich
I'm also here, I might be a bit of an overly disciplined person, but once a year for 3 months I live sugar-free.
einmal im Jahr für 3 Monate lebe ich zuckerfrei. Wirklich.
Nothing sweet, 3 months?
Do you also count grains as sugar?
No, really, just the sweets.
Okay.
Of course, grain and starch also produce glucose in the body,
Glucose, aber
but it's about industrial sugar.
den Industriezucker. Ja.
The numbers for Switzerland, I know the average consumption per day is 100 grams.
Tag ist bei 100 Gramm.
And everything over 20 grams we say is just too much.
Zu viel.
That has harmful effects, especially through the mechanism of inflammation leading to fatigue.
Dann auch zur Müdigkeit.
Yes, all the aging processes, yes.
Eben, also das
I've massively reduced that and accordingly increased the amount of vegetables.
Menge erhöht.
Now, of course, some older people say, I can't tolerate raw foods or certain types of vegetables, especially when it comes to bowel activity.
Gemüsearten, gerade auch was die Darmtätigkeit angeht.
I think I can imagine constipation. That's also something that heavily burdens the body. How does that work?
Yes, that's true. Many say, I can't tolerate vegetables, but then something is wrong with the intestines.
Etwas mit dem Darm nicht.
Actually, everyone tolerates vegetables.
Da
We would best refer to the show about the intestine, where we can discuss this more intensively. Of course, it has to do with energy.
tun. Wenn
If the intestine doesn't function properly, it's one of the main reasons why people are tired.
Is there something I can do to support the intestine simply in connection with food, or perhaps also the liver, which is also said to be the organ of fatigue?
Auch das Organ der Müdigkeit.
Yes, of course.
Klar.
So for the intestine, there is a whole range of vital substances. But I don't actually want to talk about that now, because it requires more time to explain in detail.
Das braucht mehr Zeit, das genau zu erklären.
It's important for me to simply explain that the intestine is a main source
Eine Hauptquelle
of fatigue. When patients come to me because of excessive fatigue, I always look at the intestine,
immer den Darm an.
but we need to broadly clarify where the fatigue comes from.
Woher kommt die Müdigkeit? Das
This is often forgotten.
Ich weiß, die
People come and say, the general practitioner measured iron and B12, it was fine. He didn't find anything why I'm tired.
warum ich müde bin.
that is, of course, completely inadequate. We need to look at the thyroid, sleep disorders, the psychological situation, the gut, and so on, the heart function, the medication. There are so many reasons why one can be tired that are actually overlooked. That is important to me. I cannot treat fatigue if I don't know what the actual cause is.
Now, you have really set it as a goal that many people have the opportunity to even get this holistic knowledge. You have several locations by now where patients have the opportunity to come.
Yes, so our main practice is in Winterthur, Weiss Medicine AG. Then we have a location in Brack. We are planning more. We would like to spread this type of medicine throughout Europe, but it all depends on the doctors who are integratively trained and want to come to us. There are few doctors who are even interested in integrative medicine. And if someone is watching now, please contact me. We are happy for every doctor who gets in touch. We can choose our locations freely, depending on where we find a doctor who wants to join.
Great. Yes, I think the big challenge is definitely after medical school, then this realization. At first, it took you a bit to... You already mentioned it in an interview.
It is never forbidden to become wiser.
And then really say, that's enough, now I want to see the patient as a whole and work holistically. And the nice thing is this combination where you say you're not necessarily against any medications that might be necessary, but just omit the unnecessary and replace them with truly natural things.
Patients also come to me with a list and say, these are the medications I have to take. Can I omit something here and replace it with natural substances? I often get this question, and usually out of 10 medications, I can cross out 7. But there is a principle of collegiality in medicine. So I tell the patient, yes, omit everything. I say, look, this is what I recommend, but you have to discuss it with your family doctor and inform them. They prescribed it. I do not discontinue medication prescribed by another doctor. Collegiality is too important to me for that.
But you are, of course, open when the colleague calls and asks what you actually did there.
That has never happened.
I'll leave it out there. Maybe we can open the doors a bit.
The patients who come to us explain to their family doctors, look, I want to be treated integratively. I don't swallow everything they recommend to me. These are more like the people who think independently. I tell everyone, I recommend to everyone, take the management of your illness into your own hands. You must not delegate that to the doctor. I am responsible for my body, no one else. This is overwhelming for many, I understand that, but at least try it. The information is there.
Yes, definitely. In many areas. Thank you, dear Heinz, for your work. Continued success. Thanks. I have no worries about your health, about your dynamism. I'm, of course, looking forward to the next interviews with you. Thank you very much. Dear viewers, I hope you were able to take away a lot again, also on the topic of being fit and healthy in old age. And of course, I'm always happy when you watch. Thank you very much for that. See you soon. Goodbye.